Hello, class. I hope our second week is going well for you. I just wanted to go over a little bit about our assignments this week. So we have two assignments and they are similar but different. So I'm going to go through the difference here as this can be somewhat of a confusing aspect in a way for students in the past. So this week we are in module 2. So before you begin our assignments this week, be sure to read through everything in the module, the introduction, the guide, which will go into more detail about genre, audience, and writing situations. So make sure that you read this because this will really help you in understanding the concepts of both of our assignments this week. And then our resources as well, which are focused on audience, which is an important concept this week as well, and also writing situations. So those are kind of the two main ideas that we will be working with in our Module 2 assignments. So for our first assignment, this is the 2-1 reading response exploring the text. And this assignment is going to focus on the reading that you chose, which will be either Take a Break, Beat the Clock, or The Era of Happy Tech Workers is Over. So be sure to focus on the article that you chose last week in our first module. And that is, again, the article you will focus on for the rest of the course. Now, for this, our first assignment, okay, oops, enable editing. Okay, so make sure you enable the editing and be sure that you are using the template as well, because this will ensure that you are meeting all the parameters of the assignment. And so here is where you will identify a possible primary audience of your article. So that's what the text means, is your article. So then you will here identify the primary audience that the author is targeting in her article. Okay, so thinking about, her first audience, like who she's primarily targeting, and then other possible audiences that also might be reading that article. And then here's where you will discuss why both audiences, primary and the other audiences, are appropriate regarding the genre of the text. And now remember genre that you identified last week in Module 1. So if you need to go back and look at your first assignment in Module 1 for this class, to determine or to think about genre and how the audience is appropriate for that genre, the audiences you identified. And then this is where you will also discuss the writing situation, which we learn about in this week's module, and then how the writer attracts and guides the audience. So be specific here as to how she hooks the audience and guides them through her piece. Okay? Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, but now we are going to make the shift into the second assignment. So this is where we want to shift our thinking into our own project. So for the final project, you will be writing an analysis of your article. So what this means is that you will be discussing whether the author was successful or unsuccessful in relaying her argument in her piece. So that's kind of the basis there. And then you will analyze why or why not the article was effective or how the author was successful. Okay, so now we are shifting into thinking about that project, and its objectives, right? So, as it says here, now you will turn your attention to your own writing and the analysis that you will do. Okay, so be sure and read through this closely. But here you will be identifying an audience for your project. Now, this will and should be different from the audience of the original article. Okay, so you're thinking about your project and who might benefit from an analysis of that piece. So I know this is, a little bit confusing, but you are thinking now about your audience. Okay, who would benefit from reading your analysis? It could be someone in the educational community. It might be people who are majoring in, say, mental health services that might benefit from your analysis of Take a Break. Okay, so thinking here more deeply about your audience, and it should be different than your initial or from the first assignment. So your project is going to have a different audience than the initial article's audience, if that makes sense. And then a secondary audience as well that might benefit. And then two, you will also describe the writing situation for your project. So go into what we are learning about this week about writing situation and why each audience is appropriate. So as you can see, these are, and I'll go into the template here. But as you can see, these are very similar questions as the first assignment this week. So the shift occurs when you are thinking about your own project. Okay, so that is kind of where things get a little bit confusing this week, is making that shift into thinking about your own project. And again, like I mentioned last week, be sure to read through the exemplars, as these are very helpful in seeing how another student addressed these issues or these questions. And of course, our student is using a different article than that is available for you. But anyway, this is how you can see how they addressed each of these ideas, and that can give you a little bit of guideline to base your own work off. Okay, and then as last week, you'll see the rubric again, that based on what you'll be graded on, and then you will be able to just submit your assignments in the same way that you did last week. So that's a little bit more about the difference between our two assignments this week. And I hope that helps. And again, just let me know if you have any questions. All right. Thanks. Have a great day.